What up? My name is Schwaldog, and while cooking up some other Arknights content, I've decided to divert a little bit and make this for the people to highlight certain operators. In this video, we'll specifically talk about the healing operator Nearl. Let's play. I said earlier healing operator. Nearl is actually a healing defender, which is a subtype of other defenders where they have the ability to heal using their skills. They may not have as high defense or as high HP as some of the other tanks, which we'll call main tanks. Those include Hoshiguma, Quora, Matterhorn, Beagle, Cardigan, Noir Karn. Side note, Noir Karn needs an E2. And these healing defenders include operators such as Saria, Nearl, Gumi, and Spot. And today we're specifically talking about Nearl, but let's go over some of the bullet points of what healing defenders have in their kit. So initially, healing defenders are 2 block defenders, but at E1, they become 3 block defenders. So it is important to E1 them, hopefully pretty quickly if you have the resources. Another thing is that they are a 1 block range defenders, like many defenders, but certain defenders like Hoshiguma can attack the grid in front of them. So looking at Nearl on Ace Ship GitHub, we see that Nearl is a 5-star defending healing operator. For her trust, she gets extra attack and extra defense, which the attack helps with her heals. The defense helps because she's a defender. Going down, looking at her talent, healing effect enhancement, her effectiveness of healing at E1, which that's when this unlocks, goes up 10%. At potential 5, it goes up extra 2%. And then Pegasus Aurora at E2 says when deployed, all allies' healing effectiveness goes up another 10%. And particularly for her at potential 5, goes up another 2%. And that really is, I think, one of the potential things about her that can work differently than other healing defenders is her potential to work with other healing operators, whether that's another healing defender such as Saria or your medics such as Perfumer or Telopsis, is that at E2, she increases everybody's healing ability by 10 or 12%. Coming down here and looking at her skills, we see at skill level 7, it says that the next attack will heal a nearby ally with less than half health for 150% attack and can hold 2 charges. You can see the range is the 8 grids around her, the SP cost is 5, and she's a per second regen on that SP. This skill is really for when you have her down and you have other operators that drop below half health. She reacts to that, so it's reactionary and therefore can like heal those operators before the next hit falls and kills them. And since it can store charges, then yeah, unlike other healers, when they're above 50%, you can let your other healers take care of them, and then Nearl comes in and can save their butt. Another thing to know about this is, so it says 150% attack right there, and then that doesn't include her talent of plus 10% from healing effectiveness enhancement or even the Pegasus Aurora. So you could get another 12 or 10 to 24%. Depending on if she's E1 potential 5 or E2 potential 5, you get another 24% on that, which is pretty significant. And I think that is what makes her stand out even from other operators like Saria, is that she has these talents that really increase her healing ability and her healing ability in pairing with other people. So her other skill 2, goes into first aid mode. And so she switches from attacking and storing charges to just healing. So she goes up attack plus 50%, which are gonna give you the same numbers initially. And then stops attacking enemies, like I said, and focuses on healing nearby allies, and attack interval goes up 130%, which I think means she goes slightly slower than when she would just be attacking. And this is different because it's fully healing. She's not waiting for them to drop below 50%, so if they're at 80% and she finds an operator that needs to be healed, she's gonna cast that heal on them. Let's talk about Pegasus Aurora, because at E2, she unlocks this ability, and therefore she works a lot better with other healing units. So let's take, for example, E2 level 30 full trust Nightingale, that's where I have mine at, has 373 attack. If you just add the Pegasus Aurora of 12%, that goes up to 418 attack, which ends up being healing. So 418, and because she's AoE, that's over 3 different units, which is pretty significant. And if you use that in tandem with one of Nightingale's skills, such as her last skill, Sanctuary, where her healing attack goes up 50%, that changes her healing from 559 per operator to 626. And I think that just provides a whole lot more sustainability for your team. And that's really sweet. I don't have any examples of this because my Nearl is still at E1. I'm trying to raise her to E1 max right now. And you may ask yourself, why use healing defenders rather than other defenders? When you would use healing defenders is either that you're forced to because you need to save your high range spots for your casters, for your snipers, maybe for one medic, but your team needs more regeneration than what that medic can provide, and so you pick a healing defender such as Nearl to help your team create sustainability. Maybe sometimes you want to, in another situation, you would want to create a separate squad, or a squad at least to slow down enemies, but you need some self-sustain in that group, and so you put a guard with a healing defender, and the healing defender is recharging that guard and blocking some enemies, and they can really sustain themselves and allow your main team to build up steam and to take care of the enemies that leak through. In Obsidian Festival, I did use Nearl as fodder for the stun guys, because whenever she wouldn't be stunned, she could heal herself, and then she would just get stunned. So Nearl has received criticism, and I think she justly deserves it in some critique that her HP stat is much lower than her counterparts. And for a defender, the HP stat is pretty important because a lower HP stat, she's more vulnerable to dying or needing to be retreated. So let's take a look at some of the other operators. Once again, at A-Ship GitHub, you can compare operators. And so we're looking at all of the defending healing operators. We have Saria, Nearl, Gumi, Spot. And I put them at E2 level 30 just because that's the recommended level that I'm building towards for contingency contract. But let's look at their stats. This is your 6-star counterpart, this is your 4-star counterpart, and then we have Nearl in the middle. And you can see her max HP is fairly significantly lower than Saria's, almost 300, which is pretty significant. The attack is lower, the defense is lower, and that makes sense. Comparing a 6-star operator to a 5-star operator, you would mostly want your 6-star operators to have higher stats as well as other things in their kit. Otherwise, your 5-star units are outshining all of your 6-star units. And so that initially makes sense. And in this doesn't include some of Saria's talents where every 20 seconds, she is upping her attack percentage and her defense percentage. And that will change her numbers pretty significantly after 100 seconds, which is a long time, where Nearl doesn't get that, but she does come out with basically all of her effectiveness, whether she's E1 or E2, because her talents are immediately put into place. So how viable can Nearl be? I created a document this document is looking at Area 59 for the contingency contract coming up, and looking at the baddies that are there, the bad guys that are there, and looking at their base attack, and really how does their defense stand up against these enemies, and really how comparable is it to have a Nearl versus a Saria. So looking down here, Nearl's stats at E2 30, her defense is 584, HP 2287, resistance 10. Saria over here, you can see the same stats, but then also I calculated what she is like after 100 seconds with her percentage boosts. And so down here, I've calculated against these units, especially with the increased risk, what would happen. So right here, light armored soldier, base attack plus 15%, gives them 287 attack power. Then the formula is just takes Saria's defense and then minus is that attack. And so these positive numbers that you see right here is basically they're not getting past these units' defenses. Our militant down here doing 1207 attack is doing 598 damage to Saria, 476 when she's out for 100 seconds, and 623 damage to Nearl. So you can see, let's just look initially at Nearl and Saria being out right away. There's only about like a 25 health point difference. That doesn't seem super significant to me. I know over time, and I haven't really calculated the attack intervals, but over time, like that's gonna get pretty heavy. But does Saria as a defender really outshine Nearl a ton? I don't think so. When you do calculate her full talent, so that's potential 6, adding that extra percentage to that over time and after 100 seconds, it does start to get pretty significant. One little note I put in here is that I did not know this. I'll put a clip right here of Hoshiguma using one of her skills where her defense jumps up to 1,000. And I was really confused because this Arignum slug was hitting her and like doing damage, and I was so confused. I was like, her defense is way higher than his attack. But this right here says that a minimum physical damage is 5% of the final attack. So I took this light armored soldier from up here without any risk bonus of 250 attack, and 5% of that is 12.5. So at minimum, even if their defense is way higher than their attack, that 12.5 damage is going to get through. And I think that works both ways for your operators that are attacking enemies that their defense is higher than their attack. I think 5% still goes through. So looking over here, there's plus 35%. You can see that right here on the armed militant again, 808 damage is getting through versus 833. It seems like right here it starts to get a little bit significant because I don't think Nearl can survive more than 3 hits if she wasn't going to heal. But Saria could survive 4, and that's pretty significant when you get up there. Coming over here, when the base attack goes up 80%, you can see that the damage is becoming pretty significant. 1281 is getting through, 1306 is getting through, and so just 26 or 27 health that's getting through that's different. At that level, they're going to take around the same amount of hits. Actually, at that level, it seems that Nearl could take only 2 hits and Saria could take 3, especially when you start adding in her talent. When looking at their defense, especially in Contingency Contract, yes, Saria does outrank Nearl in terms of defense and probably can survive a couple more hits or 1 more hit, and that could be very, very important to your team. I'm thinking what you want anyway is to put an operator like Quora or Hoshiguma down to be the priority of getting hit, and then you're using Saria or Nearl to heal that operator and to continue to block some of the more low minions, but you're using your Quora or your Hoshiguma to block these big baddies. Yeah, so fairly comparable, I'd say. Another thing we're going to look at is their healing abilities. And so over here, once again, I used E230 for both of them in this top situation, and then E170 in this bottom situation. And so I calculated their attack. And then, oh yeah, also Saria after 100 seconds. And so you can see that Saria's talent, especially at E170, really then helps her to shine after 100 seconds, but that's a while. So Nearl coming out initially actually does do more healing with her first aid ability. 687 versus 637, Saria using first aid, because they have the same stats. Both Saria and Nearl's stats for first aid, Nearl's talents that work with it. So you can see here that this talent of 12%, because I'm counting that potential 5, is working towards first aid and first aid mode. So they become different types of healing operators at skill 2, where Nearl is still focusing on single targets. Saria becomes a AoE healer, and everyone in that range, and her range is pretty crazy, she heals them. But I think Nearl still shows a lot of viability with her first aid skill. Especially, this is what has been talked about for Contingency Contract, is focusing on skill 1 because you want that reactionary healing type approach. So what are we looking at? I think Nearl is totally a viable option for a healing defender, even if you have Saria. They're used in different situations in different ways. E2 for Nearl really adds sustainability to your team by helping boost the effectiveness of healing by all medics and all healing defenders. And then when we look at Contingency Contract and if skill 1 is the skill to use, then they are pretty comparable. If Saria is out for 100 seconds, she becomes significantly better. But when they come out initially, they're doing roughly the same thing. My suggestion would be, if you're using Nearl for Contingency Contract, get her to E2 level 30, take that skill 1 to M1 because it changes the SP regen from needing 5 to needing 4 SP, and that creates a much quicker usage of that healing skill. Because once again, you're trying to use it as a reactionary method. And can you use her beyond this in other situations? Totally. She's totally viable to use. And I think that's one thing that I like about this game is that even when you have higher rarity, so 6-star operators, your 5-star and your 4-star operators usually come with some sort of gimmick or some sort of talent that really sets them apart, at least in some way. And I think for Nearl, that way is adding sustainability to your team by increasing the healing effectiveness of herself and her team. So if you want to use Nearl, she's a freaking Pegasus. I mean, game over right there. Yeah, I think that's all I got. Well, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being on this creative journey with me. Schwadog out. Yeet.